Mira never expected her one act of kindness to expose a secret powerful enough to shatter an entire empire, because the beggar she saved was the billionaire heir the world thought was dead. If you want the full truth exposed, drop Tell Me Everything and subscribe. The city always looked different at 5:47 p.m. Not beautiful, not peaceful, just tired, just like Mira Williams. She rushed out her final class of the day, sneakers worn at the edges, jeans faded, backpack hanging from one working zipper that prayed to God every evening for strength. Her breath carried the faint scent of cheap paper and cafeteria rice, and her shoulders felt like she had been carrying the entire semester on her spine. Mira wasn't just a college student. She was a survivor of long nights, overdue bills, and shifts at the campus cafe that barely kept her afloat. Her life was a delicate balance between almost enough and not enough, but she pushed on anyway. Students walked briskly around her, chattering, complaining, dreaming, living. Taxis honked. Bus fumes laced the air. The city moved without apology. And then there was him, the man no one looked at, the man everyone avoided, the ghost of the sidewalk. He sat at the base of the library steps, always in the same spot, always with the same stillness. His shoulders were hunched beneath a coat that looked like it had survived 3 winters too many. His beard was thick and wild, his hair tangled, his hands resting loosely on a scratched metal bowl at his feet. People stepped around him like he was an obstacle. Some pinched their noses. Some whispered, "Don't make eye contact. He smells. He just sits there. Weird." But Mira slowed down. And then she stopped. It wasn't pity. It wasn't charity. It was an ache she couldn't explain. An instinct sharper than logic. She lowered herself onto the pavement beside him, the cold biting through her jeans. He didn't look at her. He never did. Mira pulled out her sketchbook, the one with dog-eared pages and charcoal fingerprints, and began shading the outline of a tree she'd seen earlier. Her hand moved softly, her strokes deliberate. From the corner of her eye, she saw him shift. Not much, but enough. She set a cup of steaming, cheap coffee near his foot. He didn't take it at first. He stared at it like it was foreign, like kindness was something he no longer knew how to touch. Then his hand, rough, trembling, hesitant, reached out. He lifted the cup gently, almost reverently, like he was afraid it would disappear. His fingers shook. His breathing hitched. He brought the cup close to his lips. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible. His voice startled her. Soft, gentle, almost apologetic, as if he believed he wasn't worthy of speaking. "You're welcome," Mira replied, offering him a small smile. The sidewalk around them moved like a river, fast, loud, indifferent. But here, in this tiny pocket of stillness, something unspoken lived between them. Mira didn't ask questions. She never pried. She talked about normal things, her classes, her professors, the rude customer who asked for a refund on a $2 biscuit during her shift. And though he rarely responded, he listened, really listened. Every now and then, when she said something funny or unexpected, the corner of his mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile. She noticed everything. The way he flinched when car doors slammed. The way he stared at tall buildings, like they carried memories he wished he could forget. The way he studied people, not with envy, but with sorrow. This wasn't a man broken by the streets. This was a man broken long before he ever touched them. What she didn't notice, not yet, was the weight in his eyes, the depth, the secrets. She only knew that sitting beside him gave her something she lacked in her busy, chaotic life, a strange sense of peace. She wasn't helping him. He was helping her. Time passed. Students kept walking. Cars kept honking. Life kept moving. But Mira and the man remained in their quiet bubble. A breeze brushed past them. Her sketching slowed. And then out of nowhere, the man spoke again. His voice was deeper this time, steadier, though still wrapped in caution. Why do you sit with me?" Mira froze. She looked up at him. Really looked. His face was angled towards her slightly. Not fully, but enough for her to see the exhaustion etched into his features. The ache hidden behind his eyes. The disbelief that someone could willingly choose his presence. Her chest tightened. "No one else does," she said honestly. and you look like you could use company." He blinked, startled by the simplicity of her answer. Mira shrugged lightly, hugging her sketchbook. Everyone deserves someone sitting beside them sometimes. For a moment, a long, suspended, fragile moment, it felt like the entire city stopped breathing. The man's eyes glistened. His thumb stroked the rim of the coffee cup. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something more, something important, something true. But he didn't. The moment passed. The city resumed its chaotic heartbeat. Yet in that stillness, something irreversible had shifted. Something small, something powerful, something that would change both of their lives forever. The man turned slightly, his gaze meeting hers for the first time, fully, directly, intensely. His eyes were not the eyes of a beggar, not empty, not lost, not dead. They were sharp, intelligent, haunted, and in a trembling voice that carried years of pain, he whispered, "You shouldn't sit with me." Mira's stomach dropped. "Why?" she asked softly. But he didn't answer. He just stared at her with a warning she didn't yet understand. A warning that would only make sense much, much later. Would you sit with a homeless stranger? Comment yes or no, be honest. The next day, Mira walked toward the library steps with the same tired shuffle in her feet, but something in her chest felt different. Lighter, warmer, curious. She didn't know why she cared so much about a man she barely knew, a stranger whose name she wasn't even sure was real. But she did, and she couldn't shake the way he had looked at her yesterday, with eyes that didn't belong on the streets, eyes that carried stories, secrets, scars. She found him sitting in his usual spot, hunched over like a storm cloud pressed against the pavement. His clothes were the same, worn, faded, stretched thin by cold winds and harder nights. But one thing stood out. His metal bowl was empty, completely empty, not even a coin. She had never once seen him shake it or beg. The bowl simply existed, a silent barrier between him and the world, catching pity he never requested. Mira sat beside him again, letting her backpack slide down her shoulder with a soft thud. "You don't ask people for money," she said casually, breaking the ice. Henry didn't look at her. "I don't need it." Mira's brow arched slightly. Everyone sitting on a street corner needed money. Everyone. But he said it with a calmness that didn't fit his clothes, a confidence that didn't match his situation. She didn't press further. Not yet. Instead, she opened her lunch container, the leftover sandwich and fries she saved from her cafe shift, and held it out. "You should eat." Henry swallowed hard, not at the food, at the kindness. His hand shook slightly when he reached for it, his fingers brushing hers by accident. He drew his hand back instantly, as if he didn't deserve the touch. Thank you," he murmured. She smiled. "I get a free meal every shift. You're doing me a favor, so I don't waste it." It was a lie. She never wasted food, but she couldn't let him feel ashamed. Henry took a small bite, like a man terrified of gratitude, a man unfamiliar with being cared for. A bus roared by suddenly, its brakes screeching sharply. Henry flinched so violently that his sandwich nearly fell. Mira froze, eyes widening. His reaction wasn't normal. It wasn't mild discomfort. It was trauma, deep-rooted, still bleeding. "Hey, you okay?" she asked softly. Henry nodded without meeting her gaze, jaw clenched, breath unsteady. Every loud noise seemed to cut him open. Slamming doors, honking cars, the rumble of heavy engines. He wasn't afraid of the street. He was remembering something. Something he couldn't outrun. Mira watched him carefully, her heart tightening. She had seen PTSD videos online for her psychology class, but seeing it up close was different. It felt personal, fragile, and it made him feel even less like a homeless man and more like someone hiding. To distract him, she started talking about anything, everything, her classes, her dreams of becoming a teacher, children she wanted to inspire someday, her struggle balancing work and school, her mother telling her she was meant for more than poverty. Henry listened as if each word was a drop of water in a desert he had been wandering for years. "You want to be a teacher?" he asked quietly. Her eyebrows lifted. He rarely initiated conversation. "Yeah," she said with a shy smile. "I want to be the kind of teacher I needed when I was younger. Someone patient. Someone who sees people." Henry's expression softened profoundly, his eyes warming in a way that didn't belong to a man who slept outside. "You will be a good one," he said. Mira blinked, stunned by how certain he sounded. "How do you know?" she whispered. He turned his face slightly away, eyes dimming. "Because you see people who think they're invisible." Something fluttered in her chest. But the strange connection only deepened when she noticed small, subtle things. He spoke with perfect clarity, perfect grammar, perfect diction. He pronounced every word like someone educated, someone raised in a world where articulation mattered. She noticed the way he sat, straight back, poised, even while wearing broken clothes. She noticed the way he watched skyscrapers across the street, not with longing, but with recognition, like he had once been inside them, like he had once belonged in the world above the pavement. And every time she mentioned homework or exams, something flickered across his face, a memory he refused to resurrect. Mira swallowed and played it cool, sketching the skyline as she talked. "So, what did you want to be when you were younger?" she asked lightly. Henry stiffened. He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Someone different." That was all he said. But Mira felt those two words hit something deep, raw, buried, unhealed. She didn't know what he was running from, but she knew he was running. And yet, sitting beside her, he didn't feel like a runner. He felt like a man trying to breathe in a world that kept suffocating him. They spent an hour together, talking, eating, sharing silence. A small, gentle, warm spark between them. Fragile, unspoken, but growing stronger each day. A friendship blooming in the cracks of two broken lives. But as the sun dipped lower, Mira finally asked a question she had been avoiding since the first day she sat beside him. Her voice was quiet, careful, almost apologetic. "Henry, where are you from?" Henry froze instantly. Not a flinch, not a pause, a full-body stillness. His jaw tightened, his lashes lowered, his grip on the sandwich container trembled. For the first time since she had met him, Henry looked afraid of her. He turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes with a depth of sadness she couldn't begin to understand. I don't want to talk about that," he said sharply. His tone wasn't angry. It was wounded, defensive, borderline panicked. Mira blinked, taken aback. "Hey, it's okay," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." But he cut her off. "No," he shook his head. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't understand. I can't." He stopped mid-sentence. Mira waited. Henry swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "It's better if you don't know." Her heartbeat quickened. "Why?" she breathed. Henry's eyes glistened, with fear, regret, and something else she couldn't name. He opened his mouth to answer, to lie, or to tell the truth. She didn't know which. But before he could speak, a siren wailed in the distance. A car backfired sharply, and Henry flinched harder than she had ever seen, clutching his chest as if someone had shot him. He stood abruptly, too abruptly. "I have to go," he whispered. And just like that, he vanished into the crowd, leaving Mira with her sketchbook, her unanswered question, and a growing ache in her chest. The next day, Henry didn't show up, nor the next, nor the one after that. And Mira was left replaying the moment over and over. "Where are you from, Henry?" The way he froze, the way he panicked, the way he ran. What was he hiding? Who was he hiding from? And why did asking a simple question break him open like that? Do you think Henry will tell the truth? Comment truth or lie. The wind had a different voice that night. It wasn't the usual busy city breeze that pushed paper cups across the sidewalks or whistled between traffic poles. No, tonight it screamed. Sharp, cold, merciless. Mira pulled her thin jacket tighter against her body as she hurried down the street after her evening class. The temperature had dropped fast, the kind of drop that made her breath turn white and her fingers stiffen even inside her pockets. Her ears ached from the cold. Her shoes were soaked from melted frost, and the streetlights flickered like exhausted eyelids fighting to stay awake. But none of that mattered. Her heart paced faster as she reached the familiar stretch of pavement near the library steps. She prayed he was there. She hoped, desperately, that Henry hadn't moved, hadn't wandered away, hadn't given up on the one place she knew she'd always find him. Her steps slowed when she finally saw him. He was there, but he wasn't okay. Henry sat curled into himself, arms wrapped around his ribs, face buried in his chest. His whole body was trembling violently, like his bones were shuddering under his skin. The metal bowl in front of him rattled from the force of his shivering. Mira's breath caught. "Henry," she whispered, rushing to kneel beside him. He didn't lift his head. His fingers were blue. His lips were cracked and losing color. His shoulders jerked uncontrollably with every gust of wind. "Henry!" she said louder, touching his arm. He flinched at the contact, but didn't pull away. His voice came out broken. Cold. Not a complaint. Not a request. Just the truth. The kind that punched straight into her chest. Mira looked down at her own coat, the only real winter coat she owned. It wasn't much, but it was warm. A gift from her mother before she passed. It was all Mira had, but Henry needed it more. Without thinking, not for a second, she pulled her arms out of the sleeves and wrapped the coat around his shivering frame. "Here," she whispered gently as she tucked it around him. "You'll freeze out here." Henry's head lifted slowly. His eyes were glassy from the cold. And something else. Shock. Confusion. Heartbreak. "Mira, no," he rasped out, voice trembling harder than his body. You need that." She shook her head firmly. "I'll be fine." "You won't," he said, as if the idea of her being cold hurt him physically. Mira forced a small smile. "I'll walk fast. I'll warm up." A lie, but it didn't matter. Henry's fingers gripped the edges of the coat, but he didn't pull it tighter. Instead, he stared at Mira as if she had just handed him something more than fabric. Something he didn't know how to handle. Kindness. Care. Value. Things he hadn't received in a long, long time. The wind howled again, whipping Mira's hair around her face. She shivered violently, harder than she expected, and hugged her arms to her chest. Henry saw it. The agony in his eyes deepened. "You'll get sick. And you'll die," she replied softly. He inhaled sharply. That was the moment something invisible broke in him. Something he had stitched together with guilt, shame, and exile. He reached out slowly, cautiously, as if touching her was dangerous. His fingers brushed her wrist first, warm despite how cold he was, and then slid gently into her palm. His hand shook inside hers. No words, just touch, just a silent gratitude overflowing. Mira squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "I want to help." Henry's eyes glistened. He swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "No one has ever done that for me." The wind carried the confession away, but Mira heard every word. She didn't say anything back. She didn't need to. She gently freed her hand from his, stood up, and forced another smile. "I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" Henry looked at her like he didn't believe her, like he didn't believe tomorrow was real for someone like him. But Mira nodded reassuringly. "I'll bring hot chocolate," she said. "The good kind, with cinnamon." His lips twitched, almost a smile. She stepped backward, still facing him, still watching him. Then she turned and started walking away. Every step farther from him made her colder. Her arms burned from the wind. Her teeth began to chatter. Her heart ached with worry, but she kept walking. She didn't look back, because if she did, she knew she wouldn't leave at all. She hugged herself against the night, her body freezing, but her heart warm in a way she hadn't felt in years. She had done something good, something right, something human, and she knew with a strange softness filling her chest that Henry had felt it too. For the first time in forever, she walked home smiling, even as the cold clawed at her skin, even as the frost bit at her ears, even as her fingers went numb. She smiled because she had given something away that she couldn't replace. But somehow, it felt like she had gained something instead. Mira ran. She didn't even wait to grab breakfast or fix her tangled hair. She threw on an old sweater, grabbed her backpack, and sprinted down the sidewalk toward the library steps. Her breath puffed in fast, desperate clouds. Her heart pounded with anticipation. She imagined him sitting there again, wrapped in her coat, sipping hot chocolate she promised, maybe even smiling. But when she reached the familiar corner, she stopped, frozen. The spot was empty. Completely. The metal bowl was gone. The blanket, gone. The cardboard piece he used to sit on, gone. No coat. No sign of him. Nothing. It was as if he had never existed. Mira's stomach dropped. "H. Henry," she whispered, spinning around. She looked up and down the street. Nothing. She walked to the alley behind the building. Nothing. She checked the bus stop, the side street, the cafe entrance, the bookstore steps. Nothing. 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 Her breath grew unsteady. Her chest tightened painfully. "Where are you?" she whispered into the cold air. Her fingers dug into her backpack strap. Her eyes burned. Her throat closed. The man she had given her coat to, the man she had begun to care for in ways she didn't understand, had vanished. Overnight, without a trace, without a goodbye, without her. Mira stood on the freezing sidewalk, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her breath trembled. Her knees weakened. Her heart ached with the kind of fear that felt too big to swallow. "Henry," she whispered again. But the wind swallowed his name, and the man she saved was gone. If someone you cared about vanished overnight, what would you do? Comment below. For 3 days, Mira lived inside a storm she couldn't escape. Not the kind that fell from the sky. She had seen winter storms before. This one lived in her chest. It kept her awake. It made food taste like nothing. It made every classroom feel too bright, too loud, too fake. 3 days since Henry disappeared. 3 days since the coat she gave him vanished with him. 3 days since her heart had been pacing like it was trying to outrun something she couldn't name. Every morning she woke with a single hope. Maybe he'll be there today. Every evening she walked home with the same heartbreak. He wasn't. Mira checked the library steps, the bookstore corner, the alley, the bridge sidewalk where he sometimes warmed his hands. Nothing. She asked the cafe owner if anyone had seen him. He shrugged. "We get dozens of them passing through. They come and go. Don't get attached." But Mira had gotten attached. Not to the ragged clothes, not to the metal bowl, or the trembling hands. She had gotten attached to the person beneath all that, the quiet, the gentleness, the warmth hidden behind haunted eyes. Her friends couldn't understand. "You're seriously looking for a homeless guy?" Her roommate laughed, stuffing chips into her mouth. "Girl, you're too nice," another friend teased. "You're going to get kidnapped caring for random men on the street." "Mira," one whispered, "don't fall for sob stories. You can't save everybody." But Mira wasn't trying to save everybody. She was trying to find one person, one soul, who mattered to her in ways she didn't want to admit. She didn't tell her friends how her chest tightened every time she passed his empty spot. She didn't tell them she sometimes dreamed of him sitting there again. She didn't tell them how she whispered, "Where did you go?" into her pillow at night. No, some pains were too fragile to share. On the 4th afternoon, Mira walked home slower than usual. Her backpack felt heavier. Her steps dragged. Her hope thin as thread. The winter wind stung her cheeks, and the gray sky pressed down like a weight. She stopped at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Cars zoomed by. Taxis, old sedans, delivery vans. The same everyday noise she'd become numb to, until she heard it. A sound too smooth, too soft, too expensive. The hum of a luxury engine. A sleek black Mercedes eased to a slow glide beside the sidewalk, its paint shining like a black mirror swallowing the cold sunlight. Mira didn't look at first. Luxury cars didn't stop for girls who worked 2 part-time jobs. They didn't stop for cracked sneakers and worn jeans. But then, the back window rolled down. Slowly, smoothly, quietly. Something tugged her eyes. She turned, and every piece of air left her lungs. Sitting inside, clean-shaven, hair neatly styled, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that looked more expensive than her entire life. Eyes steady, posture straight, presence sharp as a blade, was the man she had wrapped her coat around just days ago. Henry, but not the Henry she knew. This Henry radiated wealth, power, confidence, dominance, authority, not a ghost, not a beggar, not someone the world stepped over. This was someone the world stepped back for. Mira's hand shook so hard her book slipped slightly from her grasp. "H. Henry," she whispered, barely breathing. He gave her a small, controlled smile, the kind that revealed nothing but carried everything. "Hello, Mira," he said, voice deeper, calmer, different. Not broken, not timid, not apologetic. This was a man used to speaking and being heard. A man who belonged in boardrooms, not on sidewalks. A man who could buy the entire campus and not notice a dent in his account. Mira blinked rapidly. Her throat tightened. Her heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. It didn't make sense. This couldn't be him. It couldn't, but it was. The eyes, those were the same. Gentle, searching, warm, but now holding a weight of truth she had never seen. The voice, the rhythm of it, the softness beneath the strength, that was the same too. She stepped closer slowly, as if approaching a wild animal or a ghost. "Henry, what is this?" she whispered. He exhaled softly. "Mira," he began, and the way he said her name felt like something sacred. "There are things you don't know about me." She swallowed, clearly. His gaze lowered for a moment, a flicker of the man she sat beside on the pavement. Then he looked up again, resolve in his expression. "My real name," he said quietly, "is Henry Millan." The world tilted. Mira's stomach dropped. Millan. Her mind raced in flashes. Millan Towers. Millan Industries. Millan Foundation. Millan Stadium. The name printed on half the skyscrapers in the city. Millan, as in one of the richest families in the country. Millan, the family that funded the scholarship she had applied for twice. Millan, the empire her economics professor used as a case study. Her breath hitched. She stared at him, unable to speak, because this was impossible, unbelievable, absurd. She had been sitting on cold concrete beside a billionaire, talking to him, feeding him, sharing her dreams, worrying about him, caring for him. A billionaire, disguised as a ghost. Her fingers trembled so much that her books nearly fell again. "H. Henry Millan?" she whispered in shock. He nodded once. "Yes." She staggered back a step, gripping the strap of her backpack for balance. Her heart raced. Her head spun. Her skin buzzed with adrenaline. Henry Millan, the heir to Millan Global Holdings. A man born into wealth she couldn't imagine. A man who should have been surrounded by bodyguards, chauffeurs, security teams, not sitting on a sidewalk like a forgotten soul. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The street noise faded. The people walking around her became shadows. Her breath came fast and uneven. "You lied to me," Mira said softly, voice breaking. His expression tightened, regret flickering through the cracks. "I didn't lie," he said. "I hid." "Same thing," she whispered, pain in her voice. He inhaled sharply. "Mira, please." "Who are you, really?" she demanded, voice trembling with hurt and disbelief. "Who were you when you sat beside me every day? Which one is real, the man in rags or the man in suits?" He didn't answer immediately, which was already an answer. Her heart twisted painfully. Henry leaned slightly toward the open window, lowering his voice. "Let me explain. Please." But Mira's mind was spinning too fast. Nothing made sense. The man she cared for, the man she felt connected to, the man she wanted to save, didn't need saving at all. He was someone the world bowed to. Someone who lived in penthouses, not alleys. Someone who could have bought her entire street without blinking. She stepped back again, breathing unsteady. "Henry Millan," she whispered, tasting the impossibility of it. "Yes," he said softly, eyes pleading. "But the man you sat with, he was me too." Her heart cracked, because despite the shock, despite the hurt, despite the madness swirling inside her, part of her wanted to believe that. Part of her still saw the man whose hands trembled when she wrapped her coat around him. Part of her still saw the quiet sadness in his smile. But the other part, the part frozen with fear and betrayal, whispered, "If he hid this, what else is he hiding?" Her voice came out barely audible. "You lied to me," she repeated. "Who are you, really?" Mira stepped back from the luxury car, heart pounding as the snow began to fall around her. Henry reached a hand toward her. "Mira, wait!" But she shook her head, eyes filling. "I don't even know who I've been talking to," she whispered. And before he could speak again, she turned and walked away. Shocking or expected. Type shocked if you didn't see that coming. Mira didn't know why she followed him. She didn't plan to. Her legs moved before her mind did. Shock had frozen her thoughts. But something deeper, something she couldn't name, pulled her into a black Mercedes when Henry stepped out and opened the door. He didn't touch her, didn't pressure her, didn't even look at her with the power he radiated minutes earlier. He simply whispered, "Mira, please, just hear me out." And for reasons she wasn't ready to admit, she wanted to hear him. The car moved silently through the city, its engine humming like a heartbeat beneath the leather seats. Streetlights streaked across the windows, painting golden lines across Henry's face. He looked different now, not the ghost she knew, not the billionaire sitting before her. He looked like a man trapped between two worlds, struggling to breathe in either of them. Neither of them spoke on the ride, but he kept glancing at her, little, almost scared glances, like he feared she might disappear if he blinked. After 20 minutes, the car stopped at a quiet building on the edge of downtown. Not a skyscraper, not a mansion. Something simpler. Henry stepped out first. "This way," he said softly. Mira followed him up silent staircases, past dusty hallways, and finally through a metal door that screeched as it opened. Cold air rushed out. City lights rose before them. He had brought her to a rooftop, empty, quiet, high above the noise, high above the lies, high above the world he came from. She stepped out slowly, hugging her arms as the wind lifted her hair. The city looked endless. Highways glowing, windows shimmering, distant sirens echoing like sad songs. Henry stood a few steps from her, staring at the skyline like it haunted him. "This," he whispered, "is the only place where I can breathe." For a long moment, neither said anything. Then Henry turned toward her, expression raw. No mask, no status, no armor. "I owe you the truth." Mira swallowed hard. "Yes, you do." He exhaled shakily, a breath he had been holding in for years. "My full name is Henry Millan, heir to Millan Global Holdings, the company my family has run for 4 generations. Mira's chest tightened. She had heard of Millans all her life. In the news, in business classes, in stories about wealth people couldn't imagine. But hearing him say it felt unreal. He continued, voice low. "For 28 years, everything in my life was planned. Where I went, who I met, what I studied, what I inherited." The wind ruffled his hair, and for a moment the billionaire facade cracked. Mira saw the man beneath it. 2 years ago, he said slowly, I was overseeing one of our biggest construction sites. A high-rise project my father pushed aggressively. He paused. The silence grew heavy. One evening, part of the scaffolding collapsed. Mira's breath caught. "Workers were injured," Henry whispered. "Badly. A few permanently." His voice broke on the last word. Mira took a step closer, without realizing it. Henry's jaw tightened as he continued. "The board wanted to bury the incident. My family wanted to silence it. Not because they didn't care, but because they cared more about the company's reputation. Investors, stocks, expansion." He looked down at his hands that once trembled on a cold sidewalk. "I wanted to do the right thing. Pay the men. Support their families. Publicly take responsibility." Mira could already see where this was going. "They shut me down," he whispered. "My father said I was being emotional. My sister said I didn't understand business. They told me to sign papers protecting the company and move on." He paused. "I refused." The wind grew colder. "They call me reckless, unfit, a threat to everything the family built." His chest rose and fell with the weight of the memory. "That night, I walked out of the boardroom, out of my home, out of my life. I took nothing with me. Not money, not security, not even a phone. Mira blinked, stunned. I wanted to disappear, he said softly, to punish myself, to understand what real pain felt like, what real people lived every day. I wanted guilt to swallow me. He inhaled shakily, eyes shining under the rooftop lights. For months, I lived in shelters, slept in alleys, ate from donation kitchens. People ignored me or mocked me or feared me. His voice cracked. But then you sat beside me. Mira's breath trembled. You talked to me like I was human. You handed me coffee like I mattered. You shared your world with me when I had destroyed mine. Henry stepped closer, just one slow, careful step. You made me feel alive, he whispered. Her heart pounded painfully. You made me feel seen. Mira felt her eyes sting. Her throat tightened. And when you gave me your coat, Henry's voice broke again, softer. Nobody, not one person in my world of wealth and power, had ever done something like that for me. Not like that. Not with so much kindness. He shook his head slightly, as if the memory was too much. I disappeared the next morning because I realized something terrifying. Mira wiped a tear before the fall. That I didn't want you to know who I really was, he admitted. That you liked me when I was no one. And I didn't want to lose that. And when did you realize you had to tell me? She whispered. The moment I walked away, he said, voice trembling, I wanted to walk back. I wanted to return the coat. I wanted to stand in front of you clean, honest, and whole. But I wasn't ready. Another pause. But you kept looking for me every day. You cared. And I couldn't let you believe I vanished because you did something wrong. Mira looked at him, eyes full of hurt and compassion. And now, she whispered. Henry stepped closer. One more slow step until the space between them was thin as breath. Now, I want you to know the truth. All of it. Mira didn't know when it happened, or how it happened, or why her chest felt like a fist had wrapped around her heart. Because the truth wasn't what hurt. It was the pain in his voice. It was the years of guilt carved into him. It was knowing he had been punished not just by the world, but by himself. She looked at him, really looked, and saw what she had always sensed beneath the torn clothes and haunted eyes. A man drowning, a man trying to breathe, a man who found air. Only when she showed up, slowly, she whispered, Henry, you're not a monster. He blinked hard, as if her words physically hit him. You're human, she breathed. You made a mistake, yes, but you tried to fix it, and that matters. It matters more than what anyone else did. His jaw clenched, emotion rising. Mira, and when you ran, she continued softly, you didn't run because you were weak. You ran because you were hurting. Henry looked like he didn't know how to take her kindness, like it was too big, too undeserved. But you came back, she finished. That means something. Silence, a silence filled with wind, and truth, and something deeper, fragile, blooming, dangerous. Henry swallowed hard, voice rough. You have no idea what you mean to me. Her chest tightened again, differently this time, because she felt something too. Something confusing, terrifying, and warm. She cared for him, more than she should, more than she expected, more than she wanted to admit. But she felt it anyway. Henry looked at her, really looked at her, as if she were the only person on the rooftop, in the city, in the world. Then quietly, almost in fear, he asked, Mira, do you want to leave or stay? Her breath caught. Her heart stopped. Her world paused between two answers. And the wind carried the silence between them like a fragile thread ready to break. Should Mira stay or walk away? Type stay or go in the comments. Mira didn't answer him on the rooftop, not with words. She didn't trust her voice, didn't trust her heart, didn't trust the electricity running beneath her skin every time Henry looked at her. But she stayed. She stayed beside him as the wind wrapped around them like a question neither of them knew how to answer. She stayed as he exhaled shakily, relief softening the tension in his shoulders. And she stayed as he whispered, Let me show you where I came from. Part of her wanted to say no. Part of her wanted to run, hide, disappear. She was a broke student with a cheap backpack and a heart held together by late-night prayers and second-hand hope. And he was a man whose name was carved into skyscrapers. But she followed him anyway, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she was. And something in her needed to understand why this man, this billionaire, had once chosen to sleep on the pavement instead of in his palace. The black Mercedes carried them through the city like a silent shadow. This time, Henry didn't hide behind politeness or distance. He sat close, his knee occasionally brushing hers, his breath soft and steady beside her. He wasn't the beggar from the sidewalk, but he wasn't the billionaire from the news either. He was a man caught between two identities, and Mira was the only person he wanted in the space between them. The deeper they drove into the wealthier district, the quieter Mira became. Streetlights changed from harsh yellow to soft white. Homes changed from cramped duplexes to glass mansions. Cars changed from taxis and beat-up sedans to Bentleys gliding through gated streets. By the time they reached a massive wrought iron gate taller than her apartment building, Mira's palms were sweating. The gate slid open before they even stopped. Guards straightened sharply. "Mr. Millan," they greeted. "Not, sir." Not a nod, but a full formal bow. Henry barely acknowledged them. His eyes were on Mira, checking her expression, measuring her fear, silently asking if she was still okay. She wasn't, not even close, but she stepped out of the car anyway. The estate looked less like a home and more like a museum carved from marble and old money. The driveway alone could hold 20 cars. The fountain in the center shot water, so high it looked like it scratched the moon. The mansion stretched across the horizon, white stone, tall windows, black iron balconies. But something felt wrong. It was too quiet, too perfect, too cold. Mira's breath echoed as she walked up the polished steps. Henry stayed close, as if shielding her from invisible ghosts. When the massive doors opened, she gasped. Servants, dozens of them, lined up in 2 rows on either side of the entrance hall. Not moving, not smiling, not welcoming. They stood like soldiers, back straight, eyes lowered, hands folded. Every single one of them stared at Henry with reverence and at Mira with confusion. The marble floor was so polished she could see her own trembling reflection. She looked like she didn't belong here, because she didn't, and she knew it. Henry placed a hand lightly on her back, reassuring, grounding, warm. "This is your home?" Mira whispered, voice barely audible. His jaw tightened. "No, this is where I grew up." Meaning it wasn't home. As they walked deeper into mansion, Mira noticed how Henry's steps changed. He moved carefully, not proudly, not confidently, but warily, like a man navigating a place full of memories that could strike him like knives. Every corner seemed to carry a story he didn't want to tell. Every room seemed to hold a version of him he didn't want Mira to see. She touched a framed painting on the wall, a portrait of Henry as a child, flanked by a stern man and a regal woman. "You look so different," she whispered. Henry didn't answer, because footsteps echoed from above. Elegant, sharp, deliberate. A figure appeared at the top of the grand staircase, tall, graceful, dressed in a black silk gown that shimmered like midnight. Her presence flooded the room before she even spoke. Adriana Millan, Henry's older sister, the ice queen of Milan Global. Her eyes, cold, calculating, diamond-hard, scanned the scene below. The moment she saw Mira, her expression sharpened into something cruel and amused. "Well," she said, voice smooth as a blade, "I finally see the reason you vanished." Henry stiffened. Mira's chest tightened. Adriana descended the stairs step by step, her heels clicking like judgment itself. "This," she said, waving a manicured hand toward Mira as if pointing at dirt, "is the girl you abandoned our empire for?" Her tone wasn't asking. It was accusing, mocking, burning. Mira froze. Her thrift store jeans, her stretched-out sweater, her scuffed boots, her messy ponytail, her $8 backpack. She wasn't just out of place. She was the wrong place in human form. Adriana circled her like a predator studying prey. "Look at her, Henry," she said, voice dripping venom. "A charity case student from a neighborhood Nobody claims. Wearing clothes that look older than our last merger. Myra's cheeks burned, shame, anger, fear mixing like poison. But Henry stepped between them instantly, his back straight, his expression hard, his voice cold. One more word about her, he warned, and you won't like how this ends. Adriana raised an amused eyebrow. Oh, are you threatening me, dear brother? Henry didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't step back. I'm protecting her. For the first time, something flickered across Adriana's face, irritation, maybe even surprise. But she recovered quickly. Protecting her? She echoed mockingly. From what? Reality? Because reality, Henry, is that this girl. I said enough. His voice cracked through the hall like thunder. Everyone froze, guards, staff, even Mira, and Henry continued, voice softer but infinitely more powerful. If not for her, I wouldn't be alive right now. Myra's breath caught. Adriana's expression darkened. Oh, Henry, she sighed, shaking her head. You really have changed. She stepped closer, too close, and leaned in until Mira could smell the expensive perfume on her skin. Her lips curled. You don't belong here, Adriana whispered. Not in this family. Not in this house. Not in his world. Mira swallowed, her heart pounding. Adriana's eyes sharpened. And I'll make sure, she breathed, that you leave it. The words hit Mira like a knife. Henry moved in front of her, eyes blazing. What did you just say? Adriana stepped back with a cold smile. Welcome to Millan Estate, she said softly, where ghosts don't just haunt you. Her gaze slid to Mira. They destroy you. Myra's pulse thundered in her ears. The mansion suddenly felt colder, the walls tighter, the shadows deeper. She had stepped into Henry's world. But something inside it wanted her gone. Do you hate Adriana already? Common idea. Mira had always believed she knew who she was. A poor student, a part-time waitress, a girl who dreamed of becoming a teacher, someone who blended into crowds, unnoticed, unimportant. But the moment she stepped into Henry Millan's world, that identity shattered. It wasn't the mansion that overwhelmed her. It wasn't the chandeliers or the staff or the marble floors. It was the eyes that watched her, measured her, judged her, silent but sharp, like knives dressed as curiosity. Every meal, every hallway, every moment she stood beside Henry, she felt like she was drowning in a world she was never built for. To help her adjust, Henry had assigned a social etiquette instructor, a woman named Ms. Laverne who carried herself like a walking museum statue. Back straight, fork on the left, no elbows on the table. One does not ask for seconds at a formal dinner. No loud laughter, it sounds desperate. Mira tried. She really did. But every correction felt like someone chiseling away at her humanity. She wasn't born into crystal glasses and imported cutlery. She didn't grow up attending charity galas or weekend yacht brunches. She grew up heating leftover rice on a gas stove. She grew up sharing one bathroom with 3 cousins. She grew up understanding struggle better than survival games millionaires played. And now, she had to pretend she belonged. The night of Henry's welcome back dinner was supposed to be harmless. At least, that's what he'd said. It's just a small gathering, he assured her earlier. Small. To Henry, small meant 40 people dressed in designer suits and gowns worth more than Myra's entire yearly rent. The dining hall seemed endless, a glossy room lit by a golden chandelier that sparkled like a sun frozen in motion. When Mira entered at Henry's side, the murmurs started immediately. Is that her? The girl? Where did he even find her? She looks lost. Mira kept her chin up. She remembered Ms. Laverne's lessons. But the whisper still crawled beneath her skin. Henry pulled out her chair himself, a gesture that made several guests frown. Adriana noticed. Of course she did. Adriana Millan glided across the hall, like a queen inspecting peasants. Her dress was black velvet, smooth and cold, just like her voice. So, she said with a smile so thin it was practically invisible, little Mira joins us at the table again. How refreshing. Mira tried to smile. Thank you for inviting me. Oh, darling. Adriana interrupted, placing a perfectly manicured hand on her shoulder. It wasn't a choice. Mira froze. A few guests snickered quietly. And that was just the beginning. During the first course, Adriana commented loudly, "Some of us are used to silverware. For others, well, this must be quite the adventure." More soft laughter. Mira felt heat rise up her neck, but she didn't respond. During the second course, "Mira, dear, you're holding the glass wrong. But that's all right. Practice makes perfect." And during dessert, "Henry, didn't you say she worked at a cafe? My goodness, how charming." Mira sank lower in her seat. Henry wasn't having it. "Adriana," he said sharply, "enough?" She raised a brow. "I'm only being hospitable." "You're being cruel." The room went silent. A sharp, cold silence. Adriana's smile faded. "Cruel?" she repeated quietly. "To suggest that the world she claims to love might not accept her? To remind her that you are not playing the streets anymore?" Henry stood. Mira grabbed his hand under the table. "Don't." But he shook his head softly. "You don't get to talk to her like that." A collective gasp. Adriana's expression turned icy. "So she's worth a fight now? A girl you met on the street?" Henry didn't hesitate. "She's worth everything." They left the dining hall with tension spiraling behind them like smoke. In the hallway, Henry ran a hand through his hair, breathing hard. "Henry," Mira whispered. "No, I'm sorry you had to hear that. I don't want to cause problems between you two." "You're not. Adriana's the problem." Mira swallowed, looking down at her shoes. "She hates me. She doesn't know you. She doesn't want to know me." He lifted her chin gently. "I do." But Mira wasn't reassured. Not fully. Not anymore. The next morning should have been peaceful. Instead, Henry burst into her guest room with a newspaper crushed in his hand. "Mira, I'm so sorry." Her heart stopped. There, on the front page, was a photo of her and Henry stepping out of his car. Her coat was wrinkled, her backpack old, her expression shy and overwhelmed, and the headline screamed, "Billionaire Henry Millan dating street girl?" Her knees nearly buckled. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Don't read the comments," Henry said quickly, but she already saw them. Gold digger. She's not even pretty. She'll ruin his reputation. This is embarrassing. Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. "Henry, I didn't ask for this. I never wanted this kind of attention." "I know. I'll handle it." "How?" "The entire city thinks I'm some desperate girl who—" "You're not," he said fiercely. "You're the only person who ever saw me as human." Mira blinked back tears, but the panic didn't leave. It grew. "I don't belong here," she whispered. "This world is not mine." That afternoon, Mira tried to avoid everyone. She hid in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath a willow tree. She closed her eyes, trying to slow her heartbeat. That's when she felt a presence behind her. She opened her eyes. Adriana Millan stood there, hands folded, expression unreadable, voice cold enough to freeze water. "Do you want to know the real reason Henry ran away?" Adriana asked. Mira stiffened. Henry already told me about the accident." Adriana's smile sharpened. "Did he tell you everything?" Mira hesitated. Fear slipped between her ribs like ice. Adriana stepped closer. "You're living in his world now, Mira, but you don't know what he's capable of." Mira swallowed. "You're lying." "I don't need to lie," Adriana whispered. "He's lied enough for all of us." Myra's pulse quickened. Adriana leaned in. "You don't even know what he's done." The sentence hit like a blade. Myra's breath froze. Her mind spun. And before she could respond, Adriana turned and walked away, leaving only the chilling echo of her words hanging in the air. Should Mira trust Henry? Type trust or doubt. The Millan estate was a palace of wealth, but beneath its marble floors and golden chandeliers, a darker world existed. One Mira had never imagined, one Henry had never wanted her to see. But now, she was being pulled straight into its shadows. And the person leading her, there was the last person she expected, Adriana Millan. Late in the afternoon, Mira was in the garden again, trying to gather her thoughts. Henry had gone to a board meeting. The house seemed emptier without him. That was when Adriana appeared beside the willow tree, silent, poised, and cold. "We need to talk," she said. Mira stiffened. "I don't think." "You care about him," Adriana interrupted. "Enough that you deserve to know the truth. The whole truth. Not the watered-down version he told you on that romantic rooftop." Mira hesitated. But something inside her, fear, yes, but also love, pushed her to follow. Adriana didn't look back. She simply walked, expecting Mira to trail behind her like a summons she couldn't refuse. They passed through multiple hallways, each one colder and quieter than the last, until they reached a steel door at the back of the estate. Adriana typed a code. The lock clicked, and Mira stepped into a place that felt nothing like the mansion. It felt like a grave. The room smelled of dust and metal. Light flickered from dim overhead lamps, casting long shadows against rows and rows of filing cabinets. "This," Adriana said, sweeping a hand through the air, "contains every document, every report, every scandal the family has ever buried." She walked between shelves, heels echoing like a metronome of dread. Mira swallowed. "What are you trying to show me?" Adriana stopped at a cabinet labeled MGH Site C 17 Collapse. Myra's stomach dropped. "This," Adriana whispered, "is the incident Henry forgot to tell you the truth about." She pulled out a thick folder and dropped it on a metal table, the sound sharp enough to make Mira flinch. "Read." Mira hesitated, but curiosity and fear guided her trembling fingers. The first headline made her blood run cold. Millan Global Worksite Collapses. 12 injured. 2 in critical condition. Another report. Engineer error suspected. Millan error on site during failure. Then photos. Concrete shattered like broken bones. Twisted metal beams. Workers carried out on stretchers. Blood on helmets. Dust covering everything in shades of tragedy. Myra's throat tightened painfully. Adriana leaned over her shoulder. He was overseeing the project that day. His responsibility. His decisions. His failure. "That's not fair," Mira whispered. "Fair." Adriana laughed coldly. 2 men nearly died, and the company buried it under press manipulation. Mira flipped through more documents. Police statements. Internal emails. Anonymous allegations of corner cutting. Handwritten notes from Henry about cost delays, structural concerns, and warnings ignored by senior board members. Then she saw a picture. Henry, younger, clean-shaven, but with hollow eyes, standing in front of the wreckage. He looked like a ghost in human form. Henry tried to take the blame, Adriana continued, not because he was fully guilty, but because he felt guilty. Myra's fingertips shook against the papers. "This is why he left," Adriana said, voice almost soft. "He couldn't bear the blood on his hands, even though much of it wasn't his fault." Mira blinked hard. "And the family," she whispered. "We buried it." Adriana said simply, "Let the world forget." Paid compensation quietly. Let him run off because he was too broken to function. Myra's breath stuttered. She had known Henry carried pain, but she hadn't known it was this heavy. She hadn't known it could suffocate a man's soul. A soft sound behind them, a breath, a step, made both women turn. Henry stood in the doorway, pale, frozen, eyes dark as night. "Mira," he whispered. Her heart cracked. He walked toward her slowly, like a man approaching his own execution. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said, voice shaking. "Not this way." Mira looked at the file, looked at the photos, looked at the broken man standing in front of her. "You ran away because of this?" she whispered. Henry closed his eyes. "I didn't deserve comfort," he said. "I didn't deserve forgiveness. I didn't deserve you." His hands were trembling. He clenched them tightly, as if afraid they would reveal how badly he was shaking. "I tried to fix it," he said, "but the board wanted profits, deadlines, investors. I was the youngest director, easy to blame, easier to silence." Mira stepped closer. "You left everything behind." "I wanted to be punished," he whispered. "I wanted to feel the suffering I put others through. I wanted to disappear. I didn't deserve a home or love or peace." Mira felt tears sting her eyes. Henry, he sank onto a chair, covering his face with both hands. His shoulders trembled. His breath broke. The weight of 2 years of silence collapsed on the floor with him. It was the first time she had ever seen him. Not as the beggar, not as the billionaire, not as the heir, but as a broken man who had carried guilt like a chain around his neck. Mira knelt in front of him. She took his shaking hands in hers. And in that moment, Henry finally broke. He leaned forward, forehead touching her shoulder, tears falling silently. "Mira, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." She wrapped her arms around him, tight, steady, warm. "You don't have to be perfect for me," she whispered. "You just have to be honest." He exhaled shakily. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "So am I," she whispered. "But we're terrified together." Footsteps echoed sharply. Adriana stood near the entrance, her eyes burning. She had expected Mira to run, to crumble, to leave Henry in pieces. But instead, Mira held him, comforted him, loved him. Something in Adriana's face twisted. Envy, disbelief, rage. "You're making a mistake," she snapped. Mira turned. "No," she whispered. "I'm making a choice." Henry lifted his head, eyes red, jaw clenched in a mix of sorrow and something else. Something like hope. "Mira," he said softly, "you don't have to stay." She touched his cheek gently. "Yes," she whispered. "I do." Adriana's voice sliced the air. "This girl would destroy everything we built." Mira didn't flinch. She held Henry's hand tighter and whispered, "I'm not leaving you. Not now. Not ever." Adriana's eyes widened in fury, and the war between worlds officially began. Would you forgive Henry after learning all this? Comment yes or a no. The morning Henry decided to reclaim his name, the entire Millan estate felt different. The air wasn't heavy anymore. It was charged, tense, electric, trembling with the weight of what was about to happen. Henry stood before the mirror in his private suite, buttoning the cuffs of a charcoal gray suit. He hadn't worn it in years, not since the day he'd walked away from the Empire. His reflection stared back at him. No longer the beggar on the sidewalk, no longer the runaway heir, not even the broken man Mira found in the archives. This version of Henry Millan was something entirely new, a man ready to face the world he once feared. Mira slipped into the room quietly, wearing a simple navy dress Adriana had mocked but Henry loved. She watched him from the doorway, her eyes soft, unsure, but unwavering. "You don't have to go alone," she whispered. Henry stopped, looking at her in the mirror. "I'm not," he said. He reached for her hand. She took it, and together they walked into the storm. The Millan Global Holdings headquarters towered above the city like a crown of steel and glass, intimidating, powerful, untouchable. It used to belong to Henry. Now, he was climbing back into it not as a prince returning home, but as a man ready to confront his ghosts. Security guards straightened the moment they saw him. "Mr. Millan, welcome back, sir." He nodded, but didn't stop. Executives whispered as he passed. "I thought he vanished. Why is she with him? Is he taking back control?" The boardroom doors were massive, engraved with the iconic Millan M. Henry paused only once, to glance back at Mira. "You sure?" he asked softly. She squeezed his hand. "Always." Henry pushed the doors open. 20 board members turned sharply. At the head of the table sat Adriana Millan, elegant, cold, coiled like a serpent ready to strike. "Well," she said, voice dripping venom, "look who crawled out of hiding." Henry didn't rise to the insult. He walked straight to the empty seat at the table, the second highest seat. His seat. "I didn't crawl," he said calmly. "I walked back here. Choice, not shame." Adriana's jaw twitched. "And who invited her?" Adriana snapped, pointing at Mira. Henry's voice was firm. "She stays." The board exchanged looks. A billionaire heir bringing a street girl into the boardroom? Unheard of. Unthinkable. Exactly why Henry needed to do it. Henry placed a folder on the table. The same folder from the archives. Adriana stiffened instantly. The board members leaned forward. Henry inhaled deeply. I'm here today, he began, to reclaim my seat and to reclaim my name. Murmurs, shock, some admiration, some fear. He continued, I left because I failed, and I hid because I was ashamed. But hiding doesn't fix anything. He opened the folder. These documents, he said, detail the construction accident at Site C-17, the one we buried, the one I took the blame for. Adriana slammed her hand on the table. Henry, don't you? He cut her off. Today, I take responsibility, not just in silence, not in running, but publicly, transparently, and truthfully. The room fell dead quiet. Henry stood taller. We will provide full compensation to every injured worker and their families. Gasps. We will reopen the investigation independently. Executives exchange stunned looks. And we will rebuild the site, safely, properly, honoring the people who suffered. Adriana shot to her feet. You're destroying us. Do you have any idea what this will cost? The lawsuits? The media? The investors? Henry looked her dead in the eyes. Yes, it will cost us money. But what we did cost people their lives. The entire room froze. It was the first time any Millan had ever spoken the truth out loud. While Henry stood before the board, Mira didn't sit. She stood quietly at the doorway, out of place, out of class, yet deeply, undeniably part of his world. There were moments the board glanced at her with disgust. Moments Adriana glared like fire. Moments Henry searched for her eyes and found strength in them. Mira spoke only once, when a board member sneered. How can we trust the word of someone who lived on the streets like a criminal? Henry's jaw tightened, but Mira stepped forward. I met him there. The room turned to her. And all I saw, she continued, voice steady, was a man broken by guilt, not greed. A man who didn't hide behind money or power. A man who wanted to feel human again. Henry's throat tightened. Mira finished softly. And now he's choosing to be better. That's leadership. Even the coldest executives looked away, ashamed. Adriana's eyes flashed murder. Henry knew the boardroom wasn't enough. The truth had to go beyond these walls. So an hour later, he did something no Millan had ever done. He called a press conference. Hundreds of reporters flooded the lobby. Camera flashes hit like lightning. Microphones reached like claws. Mr. Millan, where have you been for 2 years? Are rumors of mental breakdown true? Who was the woman with you? Is it true you were living as a beggar? What happened at Site C-17? Henry raised a hand. Silence fell. My name is Henry Millan, he said, voice steady, strong. And I'm here to tell the truth. Mira stood just behind him, close enough to feel the tremble in his breath. Henry inhaled deeply. I was there the day the structure collapsed. I made decisions that contributed to the failure. Real people were hurt. Real families suffered. Reporters sat frozen. And instead of facing it, Henry continued, I ran. I hid. I pretended that losing myself was punishment enough. His hands trembled, but his voice never broke. Today, I am taking responsibility. All victims will be compensated. All investigations will be reopened. And our company, my company, will rebuild on truth, not concealment. The crowd erupted. Shock, admiration, scandal, forgiveness, everything all at once. Henry turned slightly to Mira. His eyes softened. He stepped closer to microphone. And there is one more truth I need to share. The crowd leaned in. Mira froze. Adriana, watching from the balcony, went rigid. Henry said, This is Mira Williams. Camera flashes intensified. She found me when I was at my lowest. She sat with me when the world wouldn't look at me. She reminded me what being human means. Myra's heart pounded. Henry looked straight into the cameras, then back at her. She is the reason I came back home. The room exploded. Reporters yelling. Paparazzi surging. Social media detonating. Adriana storming down the stairs in fury. And Mira? She couldn't breathe. The entire world now knew. Henry had chosen her. Henry reached for Myra's hand in front of everyone. Cameras flashing wildly, and whispered, I'm done hiding. Mira looked up, overwhelmed, trembling, speechless. Behind them, Adriana's voice cut through the chaos. This isn't over. The war was only beginning. If this moment gave you chills, hit like... Midnight settled softly over the Millan estate, wrapping the vast mansion grounds in a tender hush. Warm lantern lights glowed along the stone pathway, illuminating the garden with a dreamy, almost unreal radiance. Roses with dew-kissed petals lined the edges. A gentle breeze drifted by, carrying hints of lavender and old memories. It was the first quiet moment Henry and Mira had shared since the world learned the truth. Inside the mansion, phones still buzzed with media alerts. Board members were arguing. Adriana paced somewhere in the East Wing, livid and defeated in the same breath. The entire Millan Empire was cracking open under the weight of honesty. But in the garden, there was only them. Henry stood near the fountain, hands tucked into his pockets, shoulders tense, eyes lowered. He looked like a king stripped of armor for the first time. The lights above him reflected on his face, revealing a vulnerability few had ever seen. Mira approached slowly, her footsteps soft on the stone path. "You disappeared," she said gently. He turned, relief flooding his eyes at the sight of her. "I needed air. Too much at once." He laughed quietly, not with humor, but with exhaustion. "The world knows everything now. My mistakes. My shame. You." Mira stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in his posture. "You're trembling," she whispered. He exhaled, a shaky breath that carried years of pressure. "Because I keep thinking," he said quietly, "what if I'm not enough for this? For you? For redemption? What if everything I try to fix breaks again?" Myra's heart tightened. Henry Millan, the man whose last name sat on skyscrapers, was afraid he wasn't enough for a girl who once couldn't afford a full lunch. She reached for his hand. He flinched for a moment, not from fear of her, but from fear of failing. Mira intertwined her fingers with his. "Then start small," she said softly. "Start where you are. Start with me. Together." Henry's throat tightened. His eyes glistened in the lantern glow. "No wealth," she added. "No cameras, no boardrooms, no guilt. Just us, the way we were on the sidewalk." Henry gave a shaky smile. "On the sidewalk? I thought you were an angel who didn't know she was saving a ghost." "You weren't a ghost," Mira whispered. "You were a man, and I saw him before the world did." He looked away, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, Henry Millan wasn't a billionaire or a runaway heir or a scandal. He was just a man standing in a garden with the person who refused to let him drown. Up on the mansion balcony, partially hidden behind a marble column, Adriana Millan watched them. Her expression was complicated. Jealousy, anger, fear, but beneath all of that, something unexpected. Confusion, maybe even longing. She watched her brother, once broken, stand straighter with Mira beside him. She watched the girl she tried to crush, now holding the heart of a man she thought she knew. Adriana whispered to herself. She changed him, and for the first time, she didn't sound angry. She sounded scared. Because if Mira Williams could reach Henry, the one who vanished, maybe Mira could change the empire too. Mira pulled something from behind her back. Her sketchbook, the same one she used at the sidewalk. The same one filled with her dreams, her drawings, her quiet little worlds. Henry smiled softly. "You brought it. I want to show you something." She opened to the first page. A rough pencil sketch of Henry as she first saw him. Ragged coat, lowered head, a sadness around him like a cloud. "You drew me like this?" he whispered. "That's how you looked." She turned the page. It was Henry again. Still sitting, still quiet, but his eyes looked a little softer. The day she first brought him coffee. Another page. Henry wrapped in her coat. Eyes full of tears he didn't let fall. He swallowed hard. Then she turned to the final pages. Henry in a suit, hair neatly styled, standing tall, standing whole, standing like a man who returned from the dead. His eyes widened. "This is how I see you now," she whispered. For the first time, he couldn't speak. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch the drawing, as if afraid it might fade if he blinked. I don't deserve this, he exhaled. Mira shook her head, placing her hand over his heart. Yes, you do, because you're trying. Henry closed his eyes, and when he opened them, nothing in the world could stop what happened next. Henry cupped her face gently, cautiously, like she was something precious he'd only just realized he could hold. Mira, he breathed. Her eyes softened, and under the soft lantern lights, in a garden far too beautiful for all the pain they carried, Henry kissed her, not with hunger, not with desperation, but with gratitude, with healing, with a quiet ache that whispered, "Thank you for finding me." Mira melted into him, one hand on his chest, the other cupping his jaw, his arms wrapped around her, cautious at first, then trembling with emotion. It was the kiss of a man who'd been lonely for years, and a girl who never thought she'd be loved by someone like him. It was slow, tender, real, and when they finally pulled apart, Henry rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "With you, I feel alive." They sat by the fountain afterward, legs tucked beneath them, Henry leaning his head on Myra's shoulder. He told her things he'd never said aloud, that he didn't trust the board, that Adriana was losing control, that the media storm was only beginning, that old enemies would come back. That part of him feared returning to the public eye. Mira listened quietly, rubbing his back in slow circles. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. "You just have to be honest." Henry kissed her forehead gently. He wanted to stay in the garden forever, where no past existed, where no empire demanded him, where no secret chased him. Just peace. Just Mira. Just breath. But peace rarely lasts long in the world of kings. At sunrise, Mira woke in the guest room Henry insisted she stay in. Light poured in through the tall windows. Something slid under the door. A white envelope. No name on the front. No sender. Just her name written in elegant black ink. Mira Williams. She frowned, picked it up, opened it slowly. One sheet of paper. One sentence. From a person claiming to know the real reason Henry disappeared. A reason Henry himself never mentioned. Then she saw the signature. Her blood ran cold. Her eyes widened. Her breath hitched. Impossible. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Henry headed toward her room. Mira hid the letter behind her back, heart racing. Whoever wrote this knew something dangerous. Something Henry might not want her to know. Something that could destroy everything they built. The signature on the letter was a name she never expected. A name Henry feared. The letter shook in her trembling hand. Mira whispered the name to herself in horror. And in that moment, she realized. The past hadn't finished with Henry Millan. The real war was only beginning. Want part 2? Comment. Continue the story.